economy is shrinking faster than was thought. Manufacturing and the service sector suffered the most as the latest figures show the economy shrank again between July and September. Britain still isn't officially in a recession, but that will almost certainly be the case by next month. Here's Richard Scott.
The economic downturn is gathering pace. The economy shrank more than we originally thought in the third quarter, falling by 0.6% between July and September. And signs of the times are everywhere. Retailers are discounting heavily as they try to persuade us to spend. Most economists think we probably are in recession now, but we won't be able to confirm that until January. And next year could be worse.
I think that economic growth will be negative. I think output will contract by around about 2.5% next year. That's around about the same degree of contraction as we saw back in the early 1990s recession, and I think it's going to get worse.
We've already seen the collapse of Woolworths and MFI, and there are warnings that more retailers will go under in the new year.
Sales figures out from a poll of 22 retailers this morning suggest an average sales fall of around 10% by comparison with last year, which is a very, very severe drop. The other problem is the discounting, which is eating away at the profitability of retailers at a time when they should be laying down the fat for the retail winter through to next Christmas.
One retailer that's struggling to find any Christmas cheer is the tea and coffee chain Whittards. The shop, which has 130 branches, is thought to be ready to call in the administrators and is trying to find a buyer.
I think it's very sad, but obviously with the financial crisis that we're in, it's hitting businesses like this and we're losing them.
I think it's just typical really at the moment, isn't it? Everything's really going to the wall, it seems.
Just walked in and got some chocolates and they told me that they were closing down and I was absolutely gobsmacked.
And worries about the economy are also affecting the housing markets. Lenders are getting tougher and people are less willing to stretch themselves if they're worried about losing their jobs. The latest figures show the banks approved fewer than 18,000 mortgages for people to buy new homes last month. That's a new record low. Richard Scott, BBC News.
So with shops slashing their prices with the biggest pre-Christmas discounts we've ever seen, how are they doing with just 2 days to go? Well, Simon Jack is on Skipton High Street in North Yorkshire. What's the mood up there then?
Well, this high street was recently voted the best high street in Britain for shopping, and there's no doubt that since early morning it's been filling up nicely and trade is pretty brisk, but there are signs of strain. There's lots of discount signs in the windows, 50% off, 70% off in some cases, but there are some pockets of optimism. The market traders, particularly specialist shops like cheese sellers, flour sellers, they say they're having a good Christmas as their regular customers keep them going through a difficult period. As for customers, they said they're spending about the same amount of money as last year, but they're expecting to get more for that money. And that would tally with official figures we've had on retail sales and also explain why retailers whose margins are under pressure are still feeling the strain.
But what about next year? What are people expecting then?
Well, there's much more consensus that next year will be hard. I mean, both among customers who point up rising unemployment, the spectre of that, and retailers saying that they worry about the January and February period just after Christmas, when, of course, retailers are particularly vulnerable to creditors. We've heard about Whittards this morning, possibly calling in administrators. That means when their inventories are low and their cash levels are high, that's at the point where some fear that the banks may pull the plug on many retailers in the new year. So definite consensus that 2009 looks much bleaker than at the moment. But so far today, it's a pretty bustling scene, so not all doom and gloom here in Skipton in North Yorkshire.
Simon Jack, thank you very much. Well, let's talk to our economics editor, Hugh Pym, who's here with me now. The economy has contracted faster than we thought, according to these latest figures.
Yes, these are figures for the third quarter, a revision. We knew they were down, negative growth. Output actually fell by 0.5%. We were told the first quarterly fall since the early 1990s, the recession there. This revision shows that the figure was slightly worse, down 0.6%, with a fall really across the board, confirming that this is quite a nasty downturn. We're in the fourth quarter now. We'll get the figures for that in January. That is almost certain to show an even worse fall in economic activity, which would give confirmation of what everyone knows is really the case, confirmation of a recession. 2 successive quarters of negative growth. We'll get that in January, and a couple more probably of negative growth going into 2009.
And you have to wonder what's going to happen to the high street, for example. It's quite confusing at the moment. It's very busy with all these big sales, but there are clearly a lot of people suffering.
Yes, Simon made the point there that the official retail sales figures, the latest we had for November, showed sales slightly up compared to the previous year. Consumers are still out there spending. They may be leaving it to the last minute. They're looking for bargains. That means money is still being spent. It may be different next year, but money is still being spent this Christmas. Some retailers, though, are really struggling, the ones that have got high debts, the ones who haven't quite got the right products and are competing very vigorously against others. It's survival of the fittest for retailers. It means that they are not doing at all well, some of them. They may well be laying people off. It doesn't mean that the whole retail sector is completely underwater. There will be winners as well as losers.
Hugh Pym, thank you very much. Pope Benedict has compared saving mankind from homosexuality to saving